Hello and welcome to Everyday Oral Surgery. This is your host, Dr. Grant Stucki. I am an oral and maxillofacial surgeon practicing in Denver, Colorado. The goal of this podcast is to connect, learn, and inspire. In this podcast, you'll be hearing from OMS surgeons all over the globe discussing ways to improve the practice of oral and maxillofacial surgery. Most information shared in this podcast will be based on personal experience and opinions, so please supplement what you learn here with approved research studies. Without further ado, please enjoy today's episode. Welcome to another episode. Today I'm with Doctors Vic Martel and Tom Stone from Colorado. Thank you guys for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Dr. Stucki. It's great to be with you.
Yes, we've had Vic on the podcast a few times. Really appreciate some of the content he shared. And maybe we can just start, Tom, if you can give us a little bit of background on your training, your practice, what you've been doing these days, and then we can jump into our topic today.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from California. I grew up in Modesto, which is in the San Joaquin Valley, and I went to BYU for undergrad, and then met my wife and went to dental school at University of North Carolina, and loved living in North Carolina. It was great. Went to Parkland's oral surgery training program, went to medical school there and did general surgery, and stayed on for a year and did a fellowship with the kind of on staff and did the cosmetic surgery. And I thought that's what I really wanted to do. Didn't quite make it back to California. We came out to Colorado and just fell in love with it. And we've been here for 25 years. Started my practice in 2000, and it's been a great run.
That's awesome. And you have 6 kids, so I need to pick your brain about how you raised them and made them successful people. I'm still not there yet. We're working on it.
Yeah, you're in a busy phase of life.
Yes, it's a lot of work. Well, good. And then you are the CEO and co-founder of DrTalk. It's a kind of a cross-platform software application for practice growth. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we can get into it a little bit more in the podcast, but basically, DrTalk is everything that I've learned in 25 years in a software application that is accessible on the desktop and on your mobile device. And it really is a practice growth business tool that offers secure and HIPAA-compliant communication, and also the ability to have education or virtual education for referring dentists and colleagues in our community.
That's awesome. So to jump back a little bit, your practice, I'm a little familiar with it just working in Colorado as well, but I know you started focusing more on the dental implant side, maybe than as opposed to the extraction side. So how did you initially start getting into that and then deciding to focus on implants?
Well, it's interesting. When I was at the VA hospital in Dallas, my implant experience during those 6 years was I put in 6 dental implants, and every single one of them fell out. So my perspective coming into private practice was those don't work. And early on, I had the privilege of really associating with some great colleagues that started teaching me practice growth techniques through Biomet 3i, which was the implant company at the time. I met Dr. Martel, and he and I worked together, and we spent a lot of nights working through systems and content. But basically, I realized that I was taking out a lot of teeth, and I was sending the patient out the door with no solution for their missing tooth. And I think you can look at it from a business perspective that a dental implant probably generates more revenue than just a single tooth extraction. But I think it's a lot more than that. I think that, being able to offer extraction and immediate implant is like the best treatment for the patient. It offers a solution for them the same day that they lose their tooth. You also generate revenue for the restorative dentist in a little bit more timely fashion. And then obviously it's a more profitable system for an oral surgery practice. So I think that probably inspired me to focus more on dental implants. And then I think the ability to work with just great dentists in our community and offer life-changing solutions for our patients, I think that's the real motivator. So
for For sure. Probably most oral surgeons are doing maybe a couple hundred implants per year. Where was the turning point for you where you went from that to over 1,000 per year?
Well, I mean, obviously, Dr. Martel played an integral role in that. And I think one of the things that Dr. Martel taught me is simplifying the process. And I think he's learned that from his mentors like Paul Homily and others. But Vic taught me, dentistry is very complex. All the treatment planning, all the patient variables, the systems in the office, everything that we have to put together is very complex. And sometimes we impose that on the practice and we impose that on our colleagues. And so being able to simplify those processes for me was the turning point. I mean, it's kind of like In-N-Out Burger. I like In-N-Out Burger because it's so simple. You want a single, double, or triple, throw in some fries and a drink, and you're out of there. And being able to simplify dental implants for your colleagues and for your patients, that was the game changer.
Nice. Anything to add to that, Vic?
Yeah, I think the whole foundation of what I did with Tom and from my previous podcast was, I think I come everything in, as Grant and Tom. I've known Tom for 20 something years now. I think the whole foundation of what we do and why Tom is very successful is the reality of that. I have the ability in my hands to think like a GP because I am a GP. And, throughout the United States, and I still think it's true today, is, GPs think that they send dentistry out, they send it to the surgeons, they send it to whoever, and they're making everybody rich but themselves. That's the premise of general dentistry for the most part. And that's why I think we're starting to see this trend towards GPs trying to keep everything in-house. Not that I agree or disagree with that, but that's a whole other topic. But my full philosophy was this: if your specialist invest in you and the specialist helps a GP to grow their practice through education and helping them do more dentistry, then they will in turn help you grow your practice by just this interdisciplinary treatment of what we do. And they're much more inclined to refer and things if your specialist is a partner with you in helping you grow your practice. And that's where the paradigm kind of shifted, because as soon as Tom jumped on that bandwagon of, let me educate my GPs at a level where I'm growing their practices and they're doing a lot more dentistry because I'm helping them through education and through communication, everything was working hand in hand. And all of a sudden, these numbers just started growing like a hockey stick. It was impressive. And Tom is excellent at this. And we've been doing it probably together the longest of anybody that I've been working with. And it just worked. And the good news is it's repeatable. And that's where, Tom will talk about right now probably is, the whole key to doing DrTalk and everything is an oral surgeon or a periodontist, whatever, will grow their practices by communication and education. That's the key to keeping a referral very connected to you. And I think that's where Tom excels at it. But Tom, you can explain that more than me.
Yeah, and that was my next question was, how did you effectively repeat this with your other referring docs, and what kind of communication techniques did you find most effective, Tom?
Well, I think, dentistry is hard. We're all busy and we're all siloed. We don't really, there wasn't really a platform for us to share and learn and communicate. And yet, every business is founded on communication. And I think that communication has to be consistent. It has to be accurate. It has to be timely. I tell my team, inaccurate communication is worse than no communication. If you send a surgical release to a restorative dentist and you don't have the correct implant sizes or, pathway forward for them, it will send them into a spiral, and it's actually worse than not having sent anything at all. So really, and I think, it's a little bit of it, Grant, is being a good leader on your team and having that consistency, because sometimes you implement things and then we get busy and we start doing other things. I remember just being an absolute hawk with my team. I used to have like 15 different fax templates. We'd have implant consult summaries and patient care updates and surgical releases. And it drove my team crazy for a little while until they realized that it actually made their lives easier. And as soon as they realized, wow, having this consistency makes our lives easier. I mean, those systems became the foundation of my practice growth. So, I think, and another thing that I think is important, and Vic taught me this, communication is marketing. Because if you're sending updates to a restorative dentist and your name is going across their computer or across their mobile device multiple times a day, who do you think they're going to think about the next time they have to send a patient somewhere? They're going to say, hey, Grant communicates with me better than anybody else. I'm going to send this patient there. And that's what DrTalk is DrTalk's a drag, drop, and send. It's kind of like a sterile conduit from my office to the restorative dentist's office. And so when there's a document or a photo or an x-ray, my team just clicks and drags and drops it into the portal. And there's literally a toast message that pops up on every computer in the restorative dentist's office that says incoming message from Dr. Stone. And they just click and drag it into their EMR. But what we found is that the teams are on desktop. The dentists are on their phones. Dentists are on their phones 9-to-1 over websites and desktop computers. So you have to meet your restorative dentists where they live. They shop on their phones, they travel on their phones, they Uber on their phones. Why can't they communicate and learn and get CE on their phones as well? So anyway, communication, I think, is the best form of marketing.
Right. And I think if you go back a little bit in reverse and we think about the hurdles that dentists have, GPs, especially when you're dealing with your referral base. And, I actually have a part of one of my lectures called Eliminating the Hurdles, which was a whole different topic. But in essence, it's the same concept. And here's what I mean. As a GP, Grant, I'm trying to send you a patient. Well, somebody in your eye office calls your office, sets up Mrs. Jones for an appointment. And I'll be honest with you, if it's a patient that I need to talk to you about, Grant, I'm going to be really honest with you. The last thing as a dentist I want to do in my busy life is, can I speak to Dr. Stucki? Well, he's busy right now. Well, he'll call you back. It's all this back and forth to the point where at some point your GP or your referral is going to say, I really don't want to call anymore. I really don't. This is such a glitch in my day. I need something that's much more smooth and interactive so that things can happen instantaneously, because the other side of the coin is this. We're an instant gratification society now, especially with smartphones and everything that we have. I don't want to wait a half hour or an hour. I want to talk about it while it's in my head and while it's on my mind. And ultimately, we want this instant, how do I get this? Where's my surgical release? When is this patient going to be ready? That's one side of it. And now if I can accompany that with the ability to teach what I teach many times live, but combine that with, if they want to reach one of our, mentors, it's a matter of a text, and all of a sudden they can get an answer within a few minutes, as opposed to, next time I take a course, I'll ask him and things like that, which is what I get a lot of times anyways. And that's why for years I've always offered my cell phone number is for that instant if they need something quickly. And now DrTalk has solved that by it can be constant. So it's just another way of improving education and communication and making it much more instantaneous and eliminating the hurdles of the way it used to be. That's really what I'm impressed by.
Nice. Yeah, that's fantastic. What a great resource. I guess maybe you can delve into just a little bit more on how DrTalk kind of streamlines the communication in the dental community compared to traditional methods. I mean, you're talking about how you can do this now through the phone and other ways that just get it to them quicker and easier. But any other comments on that?
Well, I think it's like, I remember one evening after we did an in-person education event, we were at the Inverness and we were sitting in the restaurant, and Vic said to me, he said, Tom, he goes, you have to make it easy to refer to your practice, because if it's not easy to refer to you, I'm going somewhere else. And I think, these days of voicemails and phone tags, which I think Vic just alluded to, those would just drive me crazy. And I think if you want to have a high volume implant practice, or a successful business for that matter, you have to have operational efficiency. Dentists and referring colleagues in the community, those are your business partners. So you have to have operational efficiency with them. An example is, patient breaks a tooth off. They walk into Vic's office. It's not restorable. Vic doesn't want to sit there and have to deal with referring the patient and micromanaging that. His team can text my office, click, drag, and drop the x-ray, click, drag, and drop the referral, and it pops up on our computer screen, and we say, send them over. We just text back, send them over. There's no back and forth and waiting and can you do it? But just being available and making it easy to refer. I think that's probably the best example of how it's streamlined, communication.
Yeah, and Grant, how I used to do it the old way was exactly what Tom just said, but in my hands, because I'm in Florida, but I still had referrals that I would do this. So then I would look at the patient before they left my office, and I would say, okay, I'm going to call Mrs. Jones. I'm going to call Dr. Stucki, and I'm going to tell him exactly what I'm thinking. Tell him I think you need an implant right here, and blah blah blah. That it was always the same process. But now think about this: instead of all that, once your team, Grant, has gotten the information based on the click, drag, and drop, I can just send a quick text going, hey, Grant, here's what I'm thinking. Take out number 14. If you might need a sinus lift, but put in an implant. I'd prefer a Straumann or a ZimV, whatever it happens to be for that dentist. And all of a sudden, all of that back and forth of I call dental ping pong goes away. And that's the beauty of it, because it just streamlines everything at the point where I'm not constantly trying to, did I call Grant back or did I not call? Did Grant call me back, or am I going to play phone tag for a while? And I still, to be honest with you, I have one surgeon in my West Palm Beach area that I love as far as the surgeon's concerned. But the biggest problem is very hard to get a hold of. Just when I'll call the surgeon up and I don't get an answer for 2 days. And I've had conversations with that surgeon saying, you need to get back to me sooner. And if the person wasn't such a great surgeon, I would have left. I'll be really honest with you. I would have just not referred there anymore. But I'm like Tom knows, I'm very loyal to a fault, and I keep on trying to help them. But if they had this process in their office, it would be so much easier to refer, because it just becomes this instantaneous communication that I don't have to depend on somebody to call me back or things like that. It just changes everything because of that. And then you add on to that the point of being able to get education and CEs, which Grant, as well as everybody, the younger dentists, they want everything now. They want it in their hand. They don't want to half the time travel anywhere, right? And ultimately combining those two, which is where Tom really took this to another level, is not only doing all the things that we just spoke about, but the ability to give them education at the same time is puts icing on the cake. So I'll let Tom finish that up.
Well, I think, one of the things, Grant, that Vic taught me was, education's important, but it's not just the education. I think specifically it's case mentoring and treatment planning. And I think when you have case mentoring and treatment planning, that increases implant referrals. And I think the reason why is because dentists treatment plan what they know. And I don't think our undergraduate programs really do a great job of training the dental community in how to treatment plan cases and giving patients, their best options. And so what Vic used to do is he'd use education to help dentists find that hidden implant patient in their practice, because it was right there under their nose, but they didn't even realize it because they didn't know how to treatment plan the case. And so, education, case mentoring, treatment planning increases implant referrals. But then when you take that and you use digital scale, like with DrTalk, it increases implant referrals and growth at an even faster pace.
Yeah, I think what Tom and I saw over many, many years, and now we can do this, via the phone, is what Grant, you'd know this, and Tom knows this because you guys did it during your residencies. It's this level of what I call now, I changed the name to this because it became so popular, that you guys have used for many years, grand rounds. Just doing these things where certain dentists are sitting there treatment planning case after case after case, and that's how they learn to understand comprehensive treatment planning. And imagine us being able to do what Tom and I would spend 8 hours and look over 30 different cases for 15 to 20 dentists. Now we can do this also within the phone system, where we're teaching them how to treatment plan cases through grand round sessions that educates them, therefore increasing referrals, because they get to do, Tom and I have always said the same thing. and I think I told you this the last time we did a podcast, Grant, is dentists will only treatment plan something they know how to do, period. If it's not within their wheelhouse, it just doesn't even get overlooked. It doesn't even get seen. And that's the foundation of the educational side, is to discuss and review cases so that these types of cases become more and more familiar to them. So therefore, when they learn, they refer more. And that's the whole crux of the educational side of things, let alone looking over literature, all the other things. And we actually have a channel that's going to be coming up that's going to help dentists learn how to communicate with patients, through Paul Homily, which I've spoken to Tom about many, many times, because you may know how to do dentistry. If you can't communicate it, it still doesn't happen. That's just the way life is. The best dentists not necessarily do the most cases. Unfortunately, the ones that communicate the best do the most cases. So that's a whole nother avenue.
Sure. So DrTalk, I love this. It's helping out with both communication to get patients and information to the right place quickly, but then you're educating as well. How does that education look like? Sounds like you're doing video calls with your specialist and the referring doc, going over cases, and then you have channels where you're kind of recording talks or sessions where you're pointing things out, and then people can just look at those on demand, or how is that working?
That's a great question. So, there's virtual study clubs that are being hosted all around the country right now. And what I used to do for many years is these in-person events. And Grant, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on venues, travel, getting Vic around the country. He has to fly in the front of the plane, so that's expensive.
Yep.
And catering for dozens and even hundreds of referring doctors. That's just, I wish I had all that money back, because now what we do is we do a kickoff event, and you can do it in person, you could do it as a webinar. I think it's, it just kind of, you want to cater it to your study club or to your group. But what happens is everyone in the room, whether it's in a in-person venue or whether it's on a webinar or on a Zoom call, everybody on that call can capture a QR code on DrTalk, and that drops them into a virtual and HIPAA-compliant classroom. So everybody on that platform has a signed BAA. It's bank level. Everything's bank level encrypted. There's known sender, known recipient. It satisfies all the requirements of HIPAA compliance. But now you are able to maintain engagement with your colleagues all year. And there's just these ongoing discussions. So you have a mentor like Vic, and he's actively answering questions and responding to questions, and we're treatment planning cases. And so rather than just doing it a few times a year, you're engaged with your entire referral base throughout the year in a really positive way. So that's kind of how people are running education on DrTalk now.
Yeah, I think part of that, Grant, was this observation of mine and other speakers as well, as many of the best questions that your audience or your attendees would have for the speaker, they would come up at the break and ask it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes they're a little reticent about asking in front of everybody for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. But a lot of times, many of the questions that I get still today are when the break happens and they kind of ask me on a one-on-one. And then what I do is I say, that's a great question. Let me answer that while at the beginning of the lecture. And then, of course, I don't mention the doctor's name. I just say one of the attendees asked this. And then I go on. And here's the important reason, as you both know, is a lot of people are asking the same question in their minds. They just maybe are a little bit shy to ask it and things like that. And half the time, the questions are fantastic. And this is where, when they can come into a site and we can keep almost like this, for lack of a better way of saying it, like a Facebook group, private Facebook group where people can ask things. You can post pictures. We can post case of the month and then do a grand rounds of that case, and then maybe even point them to some literature if they're unsure. But this constant interaction, and I think the value for us was always that, maybe because of the way we did it over all these years, they had a relationship with me or the other speakers. So there was a trust value in that too. And I think that's important also, is for your attendees to have a little bit of trust in the sense that what I'm going to say to them or give them advice is something that's in their best interest, and not I'm trying to sell them anything or anything ridiculous like that. So it was always this, if I said something to them, they knew that I'm only telling them that to either help them or keep them out of trouble or whatever it happens to be. And that's when the channels start getting a lot more valuable, because they're asking better and better questions over time as they know your knowledge base and trust you and things like that. So ultimately it becomes this great center for, and that's on demand. They can do it live, or they can, come back and read the channel, a week later, because all the information and the answers to questions and the questions are still there. So they can do that at their leisure, which is huge, because, when you do a live event, it's only when they're there. So it just gives us this good reference point of almost like a transcript of what we've been discussing.
So great. So if I'm an OMS listening to this podcast, how do I get started with DrTalk?
We have a website. It's drtalk.com. You can put that in the post-podcast notes. We have an awesome customer success team. Just reach out and they can help you get set up. A couple of the cool features I think that we've built into DrTalk are an invitation engine and a suggestion engine. So you can, with the click of a button, invite all your referring doctors to join you on DrTalk. It's free for them. And our customer success team helps, there's a little bit of training. And so they help teach the offices as they onboard. And then there's also a suggestion engine. So if there's a practice that you don't work with in the area that comes onto DrTalk, it will say, "Hey, Dr. Stucki, here's Dr. Stone. He just joined DrTalk. Would you like to connect?" And the architecture is built so that when you accept that invitation, it's kind of like the HIPAA handshake. Your team is automatically connected. So there's this sterile conduit from team to team. So it's kind of fun to invite and connect and then kind of see the light go off for your referring doctors.
That's so great. What a great resource. What advice do you have for surgeons trying to grow their implant practice today? I know you've had so much success, and I'd just love to get your take on that one.
Well, that's a really good question. And I think the most basic answer, which is kind of obvious, is just be available. When our restorative colleagues need us, they don't want to need us next week or, tomorrow. They really need a solution to a patient's problem immediately. So if you can be available and provide that solution, I think that's probably the basic foundation for, growing. But I think it's a lot more than that. I used to think that growing an oral surgery practice was very much a business to business marketing concept where it's surgeon to dentist or surgeon to restorative colleagues. Increasingly, I think with technology and social media, it's very much a business to consumer type of model. And my younger partners have really helped me understand this a lot better. If you can provide a 5-star customer experience, you're going to win the patient over. And they're not only going to return when they need another implant, but they're going to go and tell their restorative doctor, "I'm not going anywhere else." And so then you've won a patient over for life. And I think my number one referral source is prior patients. It's not restorative dentists anymore. And so that starts to amplify and becomes, really contributes to exponential growth.
Yeah.
I think, part of that is also, delivering a quality result and having, quality assurance so that you don't serve up a turd sandwich to your restorative dentist. It's not like you just fire in the implant and then you send it and it's like, okay, it's not my problem anymore. I am just maniacal about making sure that the dentist has a 5-star experience. And that means, and so when we send communication on DrTalk, it goes to the patient, it goes to the dentist, it goes to the rep, it goes to the lab. So every member of the implant team has that communication for that specific patient. And it pops up on their phone, it pops up on their computer in their activity center. So nobody misses communication, but that makes the patient have a 5-star experience. I mean, when doctors and healthcare professionals communicate, the patients win.
Yeah, I think looking from the outside, knowing Tom for as long as I have, 20 years, and seeing the things that he does and still does today, is it all boils down to your referrals from your GPs are going to increase because you've built a sense of loyalty to them. And what does loyalty come from? Consistency, giving you the 5-star service, but also investing in the referrals at a point of educationally helping them. I've worked with many surgeons. Tom would know the one I'm referring to up in the New England area, New Hampshire area. And one of his best referrals when we first started doing education, he used to do about 50 implants a year in his restorative office or refer out. Now he sends me texts every few years. He's by himself. He's doing 200 to 250, restorative implant cases a year because he built a sense of loyalty. He got the education. Their communication is great. And all of a sudden, what I want to happen in the Denver area or New Hampshire area is when they think about sending somebody to a specialist, this is the only office they think of. And that's the key to building an implant practice or a specialty practice is you're the man or you're the woman in town that's where they want to. Because when it becomes the easiest place to send because you're making their life easier and better, that's when things start falling into place.
I think Vic, and you kind of taught me this many years ago. A busy implant practice is like air traffic control. You've got all these documents, referrals, x-rays coming into your practice, and they're coming in through snail mail, email, fax, cloud file sharing systems. I mean, you kind of have to take a step back and think, how many referrals am I missing? Are referrals sitting in an email box somewhere while the front desk person is on vacation for a week? And if you're missing those referrals and not acting on those referrals immediately, those patients are going somewhere else. Because most restorative colleagues give patients 3 options. You want to be the number 1 option. And so, I think when you can realize that referral in a matter of minutes, like it literally pops up on your computer, it's saved in your activity center, you process the referral, your implant or your referral capture rate for that matter just goes up. And when that goes up, you have practice growth. So I mean, it seems kind of intuitive, but a lot of people get lost in the weeds with that.
Well, it's like what you said, Tom. I mean, how many times in the past in any specialty office or for that matter in my office where you get this GP comes up, I called your office the other day and you go, oh, really? When? Well, here's the beauty of DrTalk. It's right there on your phone. Go back and check. No, we did send you a message. Here it is right here. We sent it on, April 10th, and here's everything we sent you. So now you not only you can verify that you did it, it's verified that you did respond to it, but it's in writing in front of them. So it's a record of now we got back to you because, everybody gets busy and you tend to forget things, which is human nature. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I like is when a referral comes into our practice, I get a little ping on my phone and says, Dr. Martel just sent you a referral. Like it's really fun to just see your phone like ding, ding. I mean, you can really kind of have your finger on the pulse of the practice because you can see your colleagues referring to you. But I think the reverse is true also, Vic, because when I send a surgical release to a colleague and they get a little banner that says you've received a surgical release from Dr. Stone, I just sent them $2,500. And it's almost like Pavlov's dog. I've had colleagues say, I love it when you send me DrTalk surgical releases because that generates revenue for my practice.
They get that serotonin release, kind of like the reason Facebook has likes on it is even though that's not even a monetary thing, everybody likes the like, right? And in this case, you're not only getting likes, you're getting monetary because what they're doing is they're waiting for that referral to come back. So they know they can add that to their weekly or monthly production rates, which is great for them.
How do you guys see technology and education evolving in the dental implant field?
Wow, that's a big question. Tom and I were just talking about this the other day, and I won't mention any names right now, but we're in the process of talking to a company out there that's AI built for dentists at the level where the AI with x-rays is helping treatment planning the case. I mean, that to me is mind-boggling because part of what I do is help dentists understand treatment planning and to have something at least to run it by to see if you're kind of up on the same page is amazing to me. And I hope that we can figure something out, or at least add that type of feature to DrTalk in the near future, because I think that would be very big. I think dentists would love things like that within their the palm of their hand. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's a really great question, Grant, because I think, our dentistry has already changed. I think COVID was kind of a reset for us. I think learning on the go, education on demand, access to high value content anytime, anywhere, micro learning. I think we'll always want to do over the shoulder learning, but I think the days of big meetings and podium talks, those are going away. And I think increasingly when you can have a virtual classroom on your mobile device and access that whenever you want, I think that's really powerful. I think HIPAA compliance, I think we've always kind of like blown that off. But, the ADA letter this past year to OMS practices, talking about, security breaches and technology breaches. I mean, I think we have to, like kind of sit up and pay attention to that stuff. And so I think making sure that we are leaders in our communities with regards to compliance, I think that's important. And I agree with Vic. AI is that's inevitable, and it's something that we need to embrace. I just think we need to do it thoughtfully because there's a lot of garbage out there. And so I think we need to be very careful in what we, kind of what is our source of knowledge? What is our source of education?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of work to set up something like DrTalk and keep it running. What motivates you to keep innovating and educating in your field?
I think early on in my career, I had the opportunity to do some lecturing with Vic, and this was 20 years ago. And we still have friends and colleagues today and friendships that we developed 20 years ago. And I just, I think Vic's passion for education and learning has been very contagious for me. I love the interaction with just great colleagues and friends all over the country. So I think that's probably my biggest motivator. But as I share, clinical and business mistakes that I've made, I like doing that so that others don't make the same mistakes that I've made. I wish somebody had done that for me because I had a very painful path. And I'm actually starting a channel on DrTalk, and it's just going to talk a little bit about, my day in every day that I take care of patients and implant cases and lessons that maybe cases that I would have treatment planned differently or complications that I've had and how have I solved those problems, and a little bit about treatment planning. So hopefully, some of your listeners will tune into my DrTalk channel. It's not a podcast, so it won't compete with you, Grant, but it's just kind of on their mobile app and they can access it each day. So anyway.
Nice. Do you have a story or a lesson you've learned from a setback or challenge that you've had during your journey?
Oh, wow. We could spend 3 hours. I could spend 3 hours talking. I could spend all day talking about setbacks. We all have them. I think as I was on that trajectory growing, there was so much going on, and I was just trying to hold it all together that I probably, just for a couple of years there, didn't realize how important my team was. And I probably, didn't spend as much time with them training. Maybe I didn't fully appreciate their commitment to me and to my practice and to the vision I had. So I think, as oral surgeons, we get busy, but I think, taking time to recognize your team members, compliment them, appreciate them, learn about their lives, be interested in their lives, delegate to them and trust them. I think those are maybe some important lessons that I learned. And I love my team. I look forward to going in every day, and we kind of feed off of each other's energy. And I really believe that organizational culture and building a team of leaders is essential to a successful oral surgery practice.
I agree. I think one of the things that I'm seeing changing, Grant, and unfortunately, I don't mean to sound negative, but not necessarily for the better, is we've lost this. I was very, very blessed that I had even though I made a ton of mistakes, I had great mentors in my life. I mean, yes, maybe a lot different than some. Carl Misch was my mentor. Frank Spear was so I had some really well-known mentors, but I learned a lot from those types of people. And I think mentorship still today is something young dentists need to hang on to. The biggest advantage they have is you can have mentorship via your phone nowadays. I didn't have that. The only way I could ever talk to my mentors is at a meeting, or if I happen to know them personally, give them a call. And to be honest with you, the only way you ever thrive in dentistry is by your own mistakes. You're never going to learn completely with somebody else's. But it becomes this point of, how do I keep this passion going for dentistry when I'm in my own little bubble sometimes? And my advice is, you can't be in your own little bubble. You got to open up to the world and learn from other people. And the beauty of being, smartphone related and website related nowadays is the world's at your fingertips, as opposed to me flying to San Francisco or California or New York to do something. It becomes a much more efficient way of gaining knowledge. And I think with that comes better dentistry, better treatment for patients. And that's always been my passion anyways, is just to help patients get the best they possibly can, whatever that means. And I think we need to get back to that side of it. The only difference is now it becomes electronic and data driven, which is great.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. I really appreciate you guys talking about this, sharing some tips and tricks, and especially this platform of DrTalk is an incredible resource. I mean, I feel the same way. I think most of us, especially in surgery where you have a horrible complication or something really difficult you get through, you kind of want to pass that on and say, gosh, I hope I could help share this so that other people aren't falling into the same, hole type, so to speak, which is one reason I'm doing the podcast. I've talked to tons of surgeons, and we're always talking about complications and issues and reviewing, near misses and misses and all sorts of stuff. But so great to be able to share that, help others learn and refine the process of treating patients.
Right, Grant? I mean, I don't know. I think we talked about a little bit in my podcast where, I reviewed dental cases as a dental legal expert for the last 15 years. And the things that they could avoid by just learning a little bit more. And one of the things I constantly tell dentists is there's a lot to be said for shared liability. What do I mean by that? Is discussing cases, learning from each other's mistakes so that we don't fall into these traps where, trust me, as many cases as I've reviewed over the years, you don't want to be in that kind of mess. And ultimately, if I can pick up something from my surgeon or my mentors that will keep me out of a problem, at minimum, just to not treat that patient and avoid it is worth way more than the money you're going to make off the patient itself. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yes.
Grant,
So
what you're doing is really awesome. I mean, this podcast is a great resource for oral surgeons and clinicians all over the country. And I know it's a lot of time, but it really builds a community of just sharing, and I love that. So thank you for doing this. You know who you look like, and I hope you take this as a compliment. Is you look like Scott Van Pelt, the ESPN announcer.
Yes, he's my favorite.
I was trying to think
him.
now, who does Grant look like? He looks like Scott Van Pelt.
SVP.
He's a great ESPN commentator. So, take that as a compliment.
Thank you.
Even I hear when I listen to and I listen to it as, which sounds strange. As a GP, I'm listening to your podcast once a week or whenever you put it out, which is sometimes it's related and sometimes I didn't realize it's going to be related in my life. Is that I was telling Tom, your reach is incredible. What you're giving away or giving back to the profession is fantastic because it's really clinical humor, information. It's great. And, I hope it just keeps on growing and growing because you're doing it as a service. I realize that because, it's just way different than some of the podcasts where 50% of them are commercialized. This is completely the opposite of that. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always trying to get a lot of great content and deliver it, like quickly and efficiently, because I know our listeners, a lot of them are residents, a lot are young surgeons, but they're very busy. They don't have a ton of time, and most of them are listening to it, I think, in the car while they're driving to work.
Yeah, which we all do.
Yeah, it's just another way for them to be learning something, fun, palatable, raw. Try to keep it real for these guys.
Grant, listen, as I walk my dogs, you would not believe how much oral surgery they've learned My dogs have learned
Right.
listening to the podcast. It's been great. So they're
Yes.
I play another one. So thank you.
No problem. So we end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. I think
I'll
we
let
did
Tom.
this
I did it already.
with Vic. Yeah, so we'll shoot them to Tom. They're all very easy softballs, but the first one is, what's the best book you've read in the past year, Tom?
Ooh, I love probably Peter Attia's book Outlive. He's a physician that just talks about kind of medicine 3.0 and just living a healthier life. And I've just kind of embraced that. I actually listen to his podcast as well as yours. But yeah, I think that's probably the best book I've read. So I love to read. There's a lot of others, but that's
Yes.
the best one.
I love that book as well. And some other listeners have brought that one up. But yeah, a fantastic resource, for longevity and being healthy and having a good quality of life. How about, what's the most helpful non-oral surgery thing that you've done in your life that kind of helps you with your daily oral surgery skills? Is there anything that kind of translates there and helps you?
I went to my son's business school graduation a couple of years ago, and the speaker talked about, what contributes to a happy life, and he talked about all of his business failures and successes, but through it all, he said he focused on three things. One was relationships, one was experiences, and purpose, and I've really tried to incorporate that in my life where I try to focus on relationships, not just with my team in oral surgery, but family and friends and community. And then, I invest in experiences. And one of them is my wife and I, we go on an annual honeymoon. So we pick a place in the world. We, as oral surgeons and business owners, we get a lot of points. We get a lot of points because we spend a lot of money on our credit cards. And so we use those points and we just pick a place in the world and we carve out a week and we just go and we focus on healthy nutrition, exercise. We read a book. We talk about parenting skills and kind of set our calendar for the year. So that's kind of been one of the best things we've done, is just kind of our annual honeymoon. So
It's awesome. Love it. What forceps do you use to extract tooth number 14?
ooh, whatever I can, a root canal treated number 14. I don't care how great or how experienced you are, we all get humbled. At least I do. And especially with immediate implants. I don't think immediate implants is necessarily the implant. The immediate implant has everything to do with atraumatic extraction. So getting that out in an atraumatic fashion and being able to provide that solution, that's a great product to be able to deliver to your patient and to your restorative dentist. So that didn't answer your question though. So what forceps do I use? Usually I don't need a forceps because the tooth's already broken down. It's usually a 701 or 702 burr. I section it and then I use a periotome to just, kind of get a purchase point and wedge it out of there and then deliver. But I'll usually deliver the mesial and buccal the mesial and distal roots. And then I'll use like an upper universal to take out the palatal root. That's probably a good answer.
Like that, yes. How about best movie or TV series you've watched in the past year?
Oh man, I have a really great colleague here in Denver. You probably know him. His name's Jason Hyken. And one time Jason said to me, "Have you watched Yellowstone?" And I had watched Yellowstone, the first part of it, and it was a little bit boring because it took a little while for character development. But Jason said, "You got to watch this." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because everybody's horrible. Like they're all terrible people." And I said, "Okay." So I kind of endured the first couple of episodes. And from there, my wife and I watched, when we're on planes or traveling, we've watched that. We've actually watched the 1883 series, which is kind of a preview to it. And then 1923 as well with Harrison Ford. So that's been our go-to series.
Nice. It's awesome. Favorite quote. What is your favorite quote or mantra?
I think my favorite quote is, I think when you have systems, your business grows. But when you measure those systems and modify them according to that growth or that data, your business grows at an even faster pace. I totally butchered that, but that's one of my favorite mantras, and I've tried to apply that in our oral surgery practice.
I love that. And last question is just, what's your most powerful parenting tip that you have for me as a father of 6 children?
I've got the best parenting tip. This is probably the best question of your whole podcast. My parenting strategy for 36 years has been stay out of Kimberly's way, and it works awesome. No, I'm just kidding. Here's what I think. There was another podcast that I listened to over the last couple of years, and it talked about good, better, best. And I think in today's technology and social media, we could fill our schedules with good things every day. But I think our challenge as parents in this age is finding what are the best things for our kids, and not just putting him into anything. And I think an example of that is I had a neighbor who was taking his kid, putting him in the car fairly recently. And I said, "Hey, Bob, where are you going?" And he goes, "We're going to T-ball practice." I mean, this is a 4-year-old kid. And I'm like, wow, that sounds horrible. I mean, I love that you're involved with your kid, but is that really the best thing that you could do? Maybe it is. I'm not being judgmental, but I just think, you could fill your schedule with busy stuff that seems good. But I think the challenge is, what's the best thing? So I think that's a good parenting advice. I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice because I've made all the mistakes, but I think the other one is, I tell my kids, I trust you implicitly until you give me a reason not to trust you. And I think it's better to be trusted than to be loved. And so I think my kids have, really taken that to heart. So
you've done really well, Tom. Trust me.
Well, it's ongoing.
I like that. I mean, it's a great concept. And I think as parents, we frequently need to be asking ourselves that, are we doing the best thing here for our kids? Because you're right. There's so many things that can just fill the time. Like I was mentioning before we started here, I feel like a chauffeur after work. I just drive from gymnastics to basketball to soccer to endless amounts of places. And every now and then I'll sit down with my wife and say, are we really doing the right stuff here? Is there something better we can be doing,
Yeah.
Well, and I'll leave you here, Grant. I only have 2 kids, so I'm a rookie compared to you guys, but they're adults. And you know what? The most valuable thing you can give your kids is time. Everything else is irrelevant. Kids want, whether they admit it or not, when they're teenagers, they want quality time with mom, quality time with dad. Everything else is second. And give them that, they'll feel loved. So that's my 2 cents.
I couldn't have said it better, Vic. That's great.
Yeah, so great. Well, thank you so much. I'll put your contact information in the show notes and some of the things we've mentioned, your link to DrTalk. And hopefully our listeners find this of value. Of course, listeners are always welcome to reach out to myself, to Tom, to Vic on this podcast, and appreciate everyone for listening.
Thanks again.
A lot, Grant. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Oral Surgery. For more information on these podcasts, please visit everydayoralsurgery.com. I love feedback and would be very grateful if you would reach out to me via my email, grantstucki@gmail.com, and let me know what you thought of this episode. Or you can text me at 720-441-6059. Additionally, if you have any topics you'd like to hear about, or if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email or text me. I found many of my interviewees through people who have been contacting me and have been listening, and I've gotten so many great ideas for more podcasts, and that's what helps keep the podcast rolling. So really appreciate you making that extra effort and helping me out with feedback and knowing what to do next on the podcast. Thank you so much.